progress.
Good morning. Thank you for listening to WXOX 97.1 FM in Louisville, Kentucky. This is Artist Talk with LVA, the show produced by Louisville Visual Art, and I'm the host, Keith Waits. And today I'm speaking to somebody who has a great artist name. Well, it's just a great name, period, I think, but I think it's a great name for an artist. Tomisha Lovely-Allen is a self-taught artist from Louisville, Kentucky. She earned a full scholarship at Northern Kentucky University and graduated with a bachelor's in accounting and an associate in business administration, and then earned a certified public accountant license in 2002. So I don't know how she came to be an artist. That'll be an interesting question. Tomisha began experimenting with watercolor, oil, and acrylics in 2002, was most taken with oils and has concentrated on that medium primarily, and is drawn to figurative and portraiture in her theme, in her subjects. She has participated in art shows at the Portland Museum, Wayside Expressions Gallery, Maker's Crucible, Core Gallery, Roots 101 Museum, in an exhibit curated by Ashley Cathy, and most recently at the Arts Center of the Bluegrass. She obtained a spot to illustrate a historic Kentucky woman in the Bluegrass Bowl children's book project, along with 35 other female artists, and she has exhibited in the Arts Center of the Bluegrass show, The Art of Being Black, Conversations and Experience, and she is a grant recipient from the Louisville Fund for the Arts Black Artist Grant. Tomisha, thank you for being here. You keep busy, don't you?
I'm trying to be busy. I'm taking advantage of the window of time that I have available to me.
Well, that's true, you know, and I think for creative people, you know, things can fluctuate so much that when you see that opportunity, you see that window, yes, you've got to, you can't flow.
Yeah.
So Tomisha, why I invited you to be on the show at this point in time was that you're doing Open Studio Louisville and this year, and you are in the Melwood Arts Center.
Yes.
Correct. And so it's the 15th and the 22nd of October. Are you available both of those days? Or you?
Yes, absolutely.
I want to get that business out of the way first. So now when people hear you talk, I want them to know, and we'll say it again, like where they can find you. And you can find out more about participating in Open Studio Louisville, which is very easy to do. If you go to louisvillevisualart.org/open studio, you will find there's a really beautiful illustrated book you can buy and pick up, or you can also download an app. It's so simple. There's no reason not to do it. So Tomisha, you're a self-taught artist, and I've seen your work a little bit over the years, and I was getting myself more acquainted with it as getting ready for this interview. Let's talk for a minute about being a self-taught artist. What does that mean for you? Like, besides just buying the materials and sitting there and just doing it, what is self-taught to you? What have you done to educate yourself or push yourself as an artist?
I guess because I've always been creative. I've always loved to draw women like when I was younger. I didn't take classes in high school and college or anything in relation to art. So when I first think about self-taught, I think about no professional education in the arts. But becoming self-taught for me was visiting the Speed. I used to go to the Speed a lot and going to art shows, going to St. James. I used to pick the brains of a lot of the artists. I was the annoying person that asked a lot of questions, and then I'm like, oh, they're getting full, let me leave. I'm very thankful for people who gave time to allowing me to share and to teach me what they knew. At that time, YouTube was not really a thing, but I used to check out a lot of books at the library. Like the big oversized books. I would sketch from the books. I learned to love the work of John Singer Sargent and Robert Henry. Those were two of my favorite artists during that time. I used to love them, well, and also Norman Rockwell. I was a big fan of his work. So self-taught to me is just taking the time to practice, which is a big part, experimenting, and connecting with as many resources that you have, whether they're actual artists or art spaces or art resources such as books. So that's kind of how I learned.
Well, I like you say books. You know, I'm of that generation too, and I think YouTube is a great tool, but there's something about art making that I feel like learning from a video. You know, a book is tactile and has a relationship to visual art, I think, in and of itself as an object.
Yeah.
So you said you were always drawing girls, have women been like more of a subject like to you consistently throughout all your time?
Yes, yes. Like when I was a teenager, and even when I was a little girl, I used to flip through magazines,
Mhm.
like 17 or whatever magazine, Jet, Ebony. I'd flip through and find pictures that I liked, and I would just draw them. And at the time, I didn't have like other special materials. It was just pencil and paper, basically. And so that is how I practiced. And then I used, at that time on television, they used to play all the fashion shows on television on Saturdays. And so I would sketch the fashion show. So originally I thought I would get into fashion illustrating, or I didn't necessarily think fashion design in the sense of a maker, but in the sense of the creative. But my mind shifted when I was in high school, and I talked to my counselor, and she's the one that kind of guided me towards accounting, which I don't regret at all. But so yeah.
Well, and that's I know the left brain, right brain discussion has kind of come under scrutiny now, and
Yeah.
people, that's not really such a good foundation, but it does seem curious, um, because it's a cliche, but I'm not sure that there isn't a lot of truth in it, that artists typically aren't good with things like math and sort of dealing with the business side of art. They're good at creating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So did you ever find as you developed as an artist, was that accounting background ever something that sort of you had a struggle with your artistic side, or did they mesh for you?
I think they do conflict because when I was a younger artist, I don't know if it was because I was younger or because of the career change. When I was younger, I used my imagination a lot more. Like I could just draw a person out of the top of my head and not use reference, not
Mhm.
necessarily meaning that it would be 100% proportionately correct, but I had confidence in doing that. And I was actually much better at doing it then. And maybe because I practiced more, I don't know. But now I lean strongly on reference material. And it is really hard for me to tap into my imagination. Like I consider myself more a representational realist painter. I'm very literal, but I would love to move more towards conceptual. But I think that accounting mind with the rules and the right and the wrong, and it's very objective. It it has affected my ability to just be creative and think outside of the box.
Hmm. Well, and did you work as an
Mhm.
accountant? Was that your
Yeah.
career?
Yeah, I worked in public accounting for a little bit, and then I moved into corporate accounting until I came home to be more with our children and to work more on our family business.
So now you don't work as an accountant, you're devoted to your,
I do it more for my personal business.
uh-huh.
And I mean, I have, like, even while I've been working more as an artist, every once in a while I'll go pick up an accounting job. Um, Usually if I do, it's some kind of cleanup job where they need some books
Yeah.
cleaned up, or they've been behind on something. I'll do that because I just feel like it's a skill that I need to keep.
Yeah.
And I like it, I like both sides, but I definitely love the art more.
Cool. Cool. So I just saw a painting, a more recent painting. I'm not sure exactly when you did it, but I just saw a painting that Chantrice Martin uh, uh, obtained for her exhibit that she's in the process of putting into Play Cousins Collective,
Mhm.
our Curate, Purchase, and Inspire program. And I was really impressed with it. And for one thing, we talk about being the subjects being women. This subject was a man, and it was larger than a lot of things I had seen from you. And I just felt like, man, your use of the medium, the development of everything was just really a very strong piece. And it's called Regal.
Mhm.
Talk to me a little bit about that particular piece.
Okay, so the subject in that painting is Mr. Sundiata, Miss Nzinga Beverly, her husband.
Mhm.
Uh, Prior to COVID, like literally right before COVID, we all had a show at the Core Gallery, and that's where I met him. And he's just this really tall man, and he just had a presence about him. And I asked him if I could take his picture. Now, I don't generally paint men. It's not necessarily by choice. It's just that I'm always interested in natural human expression and mood and emotion. And I find that it's easier to find it authentically in women and children. And so those are the subjects I just have most often been drawn to. But I do have a lot of male reference photos. Now, during COVID, the Fund for the Arts had a grant, the Black Artist Fund grant, that went out to encourage artists to work on a project. It didn't have boundaries on what you did. They just wanted to know what it was you're working on. And one of the things I have always wanted to do was work really large. I wanted to challenge myself to work really big without thinking about having to sell it or having to purchase all these expensive materials. Like that had always been a barrier for me, because I'm thinking, okay, first of all, my children are younger. Now, when COVID hit, all of my kids were in middle and high school. But first of all, I was intimidated by the amount of time it would have taken. And then pouring that much time into one painting versus pouring that much time into multiple paintings did not validate working on something that large. And so when I would receive the grant, I went and bought the big, huge canvas. And I said, he has to be on it because his presence needs to be big, because I saw him in that way. Like his personality, he was very humble, but he moved. When he moved around in the space, you couldn't help but notice him, even though he was very quiet. And when I took his photo, a lot of times when I ask individuals about a photo, their whole demeanor changes, but he was consistently himself. And so the other thing that drew me to him was that he made that mudcloth outfit that he had on. He had made his and the one Miss Nzinga was wearing. And so, like I said, when I knew that if I got that grant, he was going to be on that canvas. So thus having a male figure, I wanted to challenge myself, basically. I wanted to put myself in a position to work on something that would help me grow, or would help me to decide if it's something that I want to continue to do. So that grant definitely helped me in that way. And I didn't expect that the painting was going to sell. So I'm really excited about where it's going to be. And so is he.
Well, it's a marvelous image. And you're right about the garment he's wearing. And he looks, I don't know if it's a king, but he definitely looks like a leader, he looks, he's an ambassador or something, or certainly a teacher, which I think a good leader is a teacher. You get that sort of easy authority, from, and it's what he's wearing, but it's also, you've captured a certain sort of pose. So he's just standing, but the head tilts a certain way. It's always interesting to think about how the difference is, if the head had been the other way or been straight, but it's like everything works so nicely in that image. And it's interesting to hear you talk about scale too, because people love big art, but how many people can buy big art?
Absolutely.
Like, you can restrict yourself because you're trying to market yourself as an artist too, and it's hard to make a big painting. Do you feel now like that's what you're going to try to do more on that scale?
Now, prior to working on that painting, I had done the show at the Art Center of the Bluegrass. And those at the time were right when I had applied for the grant. Actually, I think I may have gotten the grant at this point, but I was already working on these two big paintings, those 3x4 paintings, which were large, extremely large to me. Because prior to that, I've had two 30 by 40 paintings, and then everything else was 18 by 24 and smaller. And so even tackling the 3x4 foot was a challenge that I was taking on before I had even started his painting. And what I have learned is, one, the 4x6 foot painting does not fit in my car. It barely fit in my car. I have a SUV, and I had to have help getting it nudged in there just to get it to Chantrice. And you're right, like if I'm going to work on that scale, I have to limit. It's more like I'm limiting my audience. So I think that I found a nice sweet spot. I really like the 3x4 foot painting. Now, and I think I still will do a 4x6 painting, but I think the 3x4 foot is a nice sweet spot for me.
Well, and it's another thing too. People think that something like a diptych or a triptych is a cool thing, but it's actually a very dysfunctional decision sometimes on the part of artists. Like, I can't move a canvas that big. But if you break it down to different panels, I think it's always interesting to see how much of what an artist does is based on functional need.
Yeah, yeah,
And that mix of like your inspiration and what is just
yeah,
the more practical needs of things.
right.
Well, how do
Yeah.
you feel? How do you feel about being an artist in Louisville right now? And I'll also add to that question. How do you feel about being a Black woman artist in Louisville right now? I remember a time when we didn't talk about those kinds of identity questions, but it seems like nowadays, how are those things not important to somebody? If you're a Black woman artist, that's a different experience than being a Black man or being a white man or being a white woman, and it's all very different. Like, so how do you feel about Louisville as a place for a Black woman artist right now? Is it a place of opportunity? Is it a place that's difficult? What do you think?
I've not been anywhere else. So, but I do find like just being, first of all, the first one was being an artist of Louisville. I believe that Louisville, not I believe, I know that Louisville is full of amazing talent, like a lot of slept on talent. Like there's so much of creative ability here. And I find that a lot of that ability, in order for it to really soar to the level that people want to, they leave because they feel like they can't thrive here. Like you're limited with your price point. Like if you look up work that is similar to your own throughout the US, you're definitely going to be on the lower spectrum of the price point. And then I think that also the demand for work is smaller. I don't think that it's necessarily smaller, but the access to those resources is limiting here.
Mhm.
I find that I think that since 2020, 2021, things have improved, but I find that, there's only so much room for so many of us in each space. And once that quota has been met, I wouldn't say that it's an intentional quota, but once it's been met, they kind of stick with that person. It feels almost like sometimes, and I don't know that if it's true, because I've not been in the art scene very long to really make accurate accurate opinions, I should say. But it just seems like sometimes when you're looking at spaces to be represented, sometimes if you were looking at overall talent amongst all artists, choosing that way is different from, it seems sometimes that you're choosing like, I gotta have at least one Black person, let me find one Black person, versus just looking at everybody and saying, who best represents this theme overall? So, but I do believe that it's changing. I just don't know how much. I mean, I just always try to say to myself that what is meant for me is meant for me. So, like to not try to pull from anyone else. I know and understand where my boundaries and my lanes are. Like I'm not a muralist. So if I see mural opportunities, I'm not going to try and jump on that because that's just not me. I'm going to try to send it to all the people who I know that are interested in murals. And so I just, I try to operate in my lane and work from that angle.
Right. Well, let me ask you, we just have a couple of minutes. So this is your first year doing Open Studio Weekend.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to about Open Studio Weekend? What are you expecting to get out of the experience?
I think the main thing is just getting people to come to my space and get to know me. I find that like one of the reasons that I didn't want a studio in my home was because I find that I connect better, my work and I connect better with people physically. I like having physical conversations with people. And I think that people receive my work better when they're looking at it literally, because I find that the audience that collects my work, like the original work, are people who want to see it physically. And so that's one of the reasons. I just really want the opportunity to meet people face to face. I like that experience.
Do you ever feel like having the studio helps sort of legitimize you in people's minds that's a level of dedication if they have any question about it? Like you have made a level of dedication to your practice by establishing that separate space?
Yeah, I think there are a few reasons why. Like one of the main the biggest reason, like even when I went into Tim Faulkner, I felt before that I didn't know the arts community in Louisville because I was in my home. I'd make, and then I was doing a lot of commissions at the time. But it was immediately when I moved out of my home into a studio that was accessible, I met so many artists that I had never known before. Like I met Miss Sandra, Miss Lucille, Ashley Cat. Like I didn't know any of these people prior to that. I mean, we're in little bitty Louisville, you know, but so the accessibility plays a huge role. That level of accessibility is important to me. And the only way that I can have that is to not be in my home.
Okay. Well, great. Well, that's about all the time we have today. Tomisha, thank you so much for talking. I know we'll do this again sometime, but Tomisha Lovely-Allen will be in one of the artists participating in Open Studio Louisville, October 15th and the 22nd from noon to 6 p.m. She's in the Melwood Arts Center. And so, you know, when you're looking around, I like to emphasize new people too, because we've been doing this a long time now. And I know some people feel like, well, am I just going to have the same artist? And I'm like, no, there's always somebody new doing it. And this year, Tomisha Lovely-Allen is one of those people.
Yeah, I'm excited. I went and bought the book. So I was flipping through it and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of talent. I mean, there's a lot of names I had never seen before. So yeah, people should participate.
You know, Tomisha, we would give you the book.
Oh, I didn't know.
Okay.
I followed the rules.
Well, I'll make sure you get a book and you can hand that book to somebody else to encourage them to go out and visit all the studios.
Okay, that'll work. Thank you.
But thank you for the support. But yeah,
Of course.
if you participate, you get a book.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's good talking to you.